Hello everybody, welcome to The Book Club. Today we are going to see the summary of the book, 1984. 1984, by George Orwell is divided into 3 parts, with a total of 23 chapters. Below is a detailed explanation of each chapter. Part 1. Chapter 1. The novel begins with the introduction of the main character, Winston Smith, who lives in a society where individualism and independent thought are prohibited, and the government, known as the Party, exercises complete control over every aspect of people's lives. Chapter 2. Winston works in the records department of the Ministry of Truth, where his job is to rewrite historical records to match the current party line. He secretly hates the party and longs for a way to rebel against it. Chapter 3. Winston encounters a fellow worker named Julia, and they begin an illicit affair, secretly meeting in private locations to avoid detection by the party's surveillance. Chapter 4. Winston recalls his childhood and the sense of loss and longing he has felt throughout his life, which he attributes to the oppressive nature of the party's rule. Chapter 5. Winston becomes increasingly paranoid about the party's surveillance, suspecting that he and Julia may be discovered at any moment. Chapter 6. Winston begins to secretly read a forbidden book that reveals the true nature of the party's rule and the extent of its brutality. Chapter 7. Winston and Julia are discovered by the Thought Police and arrested for their crimes. Part 2. Chapter 8. Winston is taken to the Ministry of Love, where he is subjected to intense torture and brainwashing in an effort to break his spirit and force him to betray Julia and confess to his crimes. Chapter 9. Winston meets his torturer, a party official named O'Brien, who explains the party's philosophy and the true nature of power and control. Chapter 10. Winston is subjected to further torture and brainwashing, causing him to lose his sense of self and become completely subservient to the party. Chapter 11. Winston is released from prison and returns to work, where he is a changed man, completely loyal to the party and devoid of any independent thought or feeling. Chapter 12. Winston encounters Julia and realizes that she too has been brainwashed and now has no memory of their past relationship. Chapter 13. Winston receives a message from O'Brien inviting him to his apartment, where he is given a copy of Emmanuel Goldstein's book, which reveals the truth about the party's rule and the methods it uses to maintain power. Chapter 14. Winston and Julia are discovered by the Thought Police and arrested again. Chapter 15. Winston is taken to the Ministry of Love for further torture and brainwashing, but this time he resists and maintains his sense of self, refusing to betray Julia or confess to his crimes. Chapter 16. Winston is subjected to the ultimate form of torture, known as Room 101, where he is confronted with his greatest fear and forced to betray everything he holds dear. Chapter 17. Winston is released from prison, having completely surrendered to the party and lost all sense of self and identity. Part 3. Chapter 18. Winston encounters Julia once again, but their brief meeting reveals that they are no longer the same people they once were and have completely surrendered to the party's rule. Chapter 19. Winston encounters an old colleague who has also been brainwashed by the party, and he realizes that he is now completely alone and surrounded by a society that has lost all sense of morality and humanity. Chapter 20. Winston is introduced to a new character, a party member named Syme, who is an enthusiastic supporter of the party's ideology and the destruction of language. Chapter 21. Winston interacting with his colleague, Syme, who has disappeared and is presumed to have been executed by the party. Winston reflects on Syme's fate and realizes that the party's control over reality is absolute. He comes to the realization that the party's power is not just external but has also infiltrated his very thoughts and emotions, and he is now completely subjugated to their authority. Chapter 22. Winston has a chance encounter with Julia, his former lover, and they both realize that they have been completely broken by the party's control. They both confess to betraying each other and express their mutual love for Big Brother, symbolizing the complete triumph of the party's authority over the individual. Chapter 23. Winston reflecting on his experiences and realizing that the party's control over reality is absolute. He comes to the realization that the party's power is not just external but has also infiltrated his very thoughts and emotions, and he is now completely subjugated to their authority. The novel ends with Winston fully submitting to the party's rule and no longer harboring any thoughts of rebellion or independent thinking. The novel's famous slogan, "Big Brother is watching you," has become a cultural icon, and the novel is widely regarded as one of the greatest works of dystopian fiction ever written. It has been adapted into numerous films, television shows, and stage productions, and its themes and ideas continue to be relevant and influential in contemporary society. Hope you people enjoy the video. Please find the buying link of the book in description. Like, share and subscribe to be notified. Happy reading!